Attention wrestling fans, you're now about to listen to the man coming down the aisle from the main streets of South Elgin, Illinois, with a microphone in his hand and questions on his mind. This is Whaddya Say with DDJ.
All right, welcome to another episode of Whaddya Say with DDJ. This is episode 37, and much like last week, this is going to be a best of show, volume 3. This episode will cover some clips from episodes 29 through 35. So kick back, relax, grab your favorite beverage, get comfy, and enjoy episode 37 of Whaddya Say with DDJ, the best of volume 3, featuring clips from episodes 29 through 35.
Hello, wrestling fans. Steve Aaron here, one half the commentary team of Chicagoland Championship Wrestling, also the general manager of Chicago Style Wrestling. And you are listening to Whaddya Say with DDJ.
Well, we'll definitely kind of dive into a little bit more with a lot of what you cover, because that pretty much just covers your entire career and stuff.
Right.
So when you made the decision to become a professional wrestler, what was the reaction that you got from your parents and your family and stuff, considering that none of them were really wrestling fans?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that they didn't discourage it. My parents, I started training when I was 19. So my mom and dad sat me down and they said, look, you can do this as long as you don't quit college for it. And I said, no, I don't want to quit college for it. And that was funny because back then I really didn't ever want to do wrestling full time. And even when I was a kid, I wanted to wrestle. I loved wrestling. I wanted to do it. I knew I wanted to do it, but I never wanted to do it full time. I knew at a young age I wanted to be married, have kids, raise a family. Like those were always really important to me. So I wasn't the itch to just go out on the road and do a bunch of crazy stuff. I don't mean crazy like jump to a table. I mean crazy like just go travel and all the stuff I started doing way later on in my career. Mm-hmm. I never really wanted to do it back then. So that was no big deal. So I started probably midway, about the beginning of my junior year, or maybe midway through my sophomore year, and I wrestled all through my college years. So up to that point. So yeah, I didn't get a ton of resistance as long as I stayed in school and didn't let it affect anything. And my grades actually went up because wrestling built up my self-confidence. And I went to school I got a bachelor's in business administration, and really junior and senior year, you're doing tons of presentations. Mm-hmm. And well, if you can cut a promo with no shirt on in front of 200 people, you can definitely put on a shirt and tie and look your best in front of 20 people and talk about business. So my presentations got just a million times better. I was so comfortable. And I was surprised because I said, gee, I'm not nervous anymore. I'm not nervous about getting in front of people. And then I remembered that wrestling gave me that gift. So yeah, wrestling actually helped me. I made the dean's list the last few years of my school most of the time and really upped my GPA. So I had no problem balancing that. And I didn't get a lot of resistance. I didn't get a lot of wild support either. Don't get me wrong. It was more apathy, not caring, but just kind of hands off. And we're not really sure what this is. And maybe he'll grow out of it. So I haven't grown out of it yet, but maybe someday.
So when you decided to pursue professional wrestling, talk a little bit more about you mentioned your trainers and stuff, but go into a little bit more detail about what they taught you, where you trained, that kind of stuff.
Sure. Well, like I said, I trained in a mill building in New Bedford, Massachusetts, which was about 15 minutes from my house. And I remember they said, oh, come check out our show a couple of days before I started training. So I went to their show. Mm-hmm. And they had a lot of people there. They had probably 300-400 people there. They had a really good crowd. Just in an old dilapidated mill building. nothing fancy. And there was a lot of young green guys. And I wasn't impressed, which was laughable because I wasn't even in the ring. So, but I wasn't impressed. I said, oh boy, these guys are a joke. We'll be 2 seconds from now. We'll be, we'll be killing it and we'll be so much better than them. And of course, everybody decided not to do it with me. And then I got humbled really quick. They didn't beat me up, but I learned that it was much more difficult than I expected. So everything was hard to do. Everything, even just falling down, taking a bump. Excuse me. It was quite a humbling experience, and didn't humble me for long because I had a lot of arrogant patches back early on, but I did, I loved going to practice. I went a couple days a week. I went as much as they had practice. I did all the shows. I did everything they asked me to do. But again, I got too big for my britches and burned my bridges there. And I mean, we're fine now. It's years later, but because they still run, well, when the pandemic comes back, they'll still be running shows. But yeah, it was quite an experience in the beginning. That's for sure. And then later on, when I went to Jeff Costa, he wanted to kill me in the beginning because the first thing I did is the first show I went to, I just changed all the matches up. I said, I'm not wrestling this guy. I'm wrestling this other guy. And because I knew I could have a match with the second guy, and I was pretty sure I couldn't have a match with the first guy. And he said, yeah, but the epitome of a good worker is to have a good match with anybody. And I was like, I kind of just shrugged at him and was arrogant and scoffed. Of course, those words still echo in my head today because that's very true. But at the time, you don't know the difference. You're just being a clown, So, and I was a young guy. So, but yeah, it was. So he wanted to kill me, and then we had that same relationship for about 15 years, and we don't talk as much as we used to, but it's courteous now. But I think you always have that. There's always something there with some of the people you train. Like I've done it too. There's most people I'm thick as thieves with, but there's people that I just. I'll never see eye to eye with. And there's a lot of love and respect there still, but there's still something underneath. And I don't know if it's a father-son thing or if it's just teacher-student thing, but there's always something there. So yeah, Jeff and I but Jeff really was, when he was full bore in like 97, 98, he was running probably 40, 50 shows a year. So he was pretty busy. For a little show in New Hampshire, we got out there quite a bit. So, so that was probably when I was at my busiest. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that was really, those are the two people early on, like those two places early on that really laid the groundwork for me.
Gotcha. Awesome. So Ryan, I got to ask, what was your backyard wrestling name?
Well, I've been using it now. Evander Holyfield, I guess, is the real deal. I didn't know that. I probably should. I feel like I coined the real deal, I thought. But I was the real deal Dylan Shivers.
Nice.
Yeah.
I just got the shivers.
Little shiver and then do a super kick. Yeah. There's
awesome. All right. So I'm going to another question. So obviously, y'all have, really, unique stories how we discovered pro wrestling. Me, my grandfather used to watch it, and I would go when I'd go to his house, he would have it on, and it just slowly kind of drew me in eventually. And then that started once I really got into it in like late 90, early 91, it was all she wrote from there. So, so guys, who would you say, like, when you first started watching wrestling, who was like your one favorite guy at the time? Not talking about now, but like back when you first started watching. Ryan, I'm going to start with you on that one.
Whoops, wrong hand. The camera. This guy right here, Bret Van Hart.
Great. Nick, how about you?
Well, when I was real little, it was Hulk Hogan, of course. Everybody was Hulk Hogan when I was born in the heart of Hulkamania. And then it was Owen Hart. I loved Owen Hart, and then eventually Chris Jericho. And I'm still just the biggest Chris Jericho mark to this day.
Yeah. And Dave, how about you?
Well, I said SummerSlam 92 was my first pay-per-view that I ever watched, and he was the world champion. That'd be the Macho Man, Randy Savage. Big Macho Man fan. Love Macho Man. I was going wild when we had that Macho Madness on that Friday.
Yeah, he's and we're obviously that's one of the things we're gonna talk about here. As soon as you went into that voice, I'm like, yeah, we definitely got to talk about that because that was a pretty significant event there.
Yep.
So I see, Dave, you have a Tampa Bay Buccaneers blanket right there behind you in the aptly named Dave Cave. So I'm assuming you're a Bucs fan, correct?
I am a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan. The only one you'll find in New York.
Wow. I'm a homer. I'm a Bears fan, and I live about 45 minutes west of Chicago. So
it's okay. My store manager at the store I work for is a Bears fan, so I root for the Bears because if the Bears do good, he's in a good mood on Monday. So I always root for the Bears.
Fair enough. So I got to ask you, what were your thoughts on? Well, he wasn't a member of the Buccaneers at the time, but your thoughts on former 24/7 champion Rob Gronkowski's involvement in the world of pro wrestling?
I thought it was great, and I always think that celebrities have their place in wrestling if done correctly. And I think Gronkowski did do it correctly. You know, he didn't overstay his welcome. He brought in mainstream publicity, the same thing that's going on with Bad Bunny. You know, I'm not a big Bad Bunny fan in terms of the music, but you know what? He's drawing more mainstream attention to the wrestling product, so it's good for the whole product. You know, and so as a Gronk fan, I thought it was cool to see one of my favorite players be a part of one of my favorite products, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun to watch.
All right, Nick and Ryan, your thoughts on the world involvement of celebrities and sports athletes in the world of professional wrestling? Because we got coming up this coming Wednesday on AEW Dynamite, we got the big tag team match involving Shaquille O'Neal. So I just wanted to get your guys' thoughts on the involvement of professional athletes and celebrities in the world of wrestling.
I'm fine with it. I mean, as long as it's not overdone. I mean, I think the Shaq thing's cool. I think the Gronk thing, I think they wanted to do more with him, I think, but he ended up signing with the Bucks. I don't think he was playing when he signed the WWE contract, turned around and signed with the Bucks right away. But because I was under the impression with Gronk that he was going to go to the performance center and do it the right way and actually learn how to wrestle. But I don't know now. But
and there went Mojo's push.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, once Gronk left, Mojo's like, well, there goes my career.
Yep.
And that. So, Ryan, what about you?
I can't think of any instances that stick out, but I mean, I appreciate it because I think it's cool. Again, like the audience. Like I try and draw anyone into wrestling I can. Like if it was Gronk, people were talking about football. They brought up Gronk today. I'm like, he wrestled. Any way to get people to kind of see into my love for wrestling. But and I think it's neat too. It probably makes me think I've been in the ring a little bit, but seeing quote unquote average people. As long as they don't put him over like Arquette, I love him now. Obviously, he drove us all crazy. And that too, he found a true love for it afterwards. So it's cool.
Have any of y'all seen that documentary he made?
I want to. I've heard good things. I still haven't watched it.
Yeah, I've seen his interviews hyping it up. It seems really good.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to watch it, but I've heard it's really good. And that's okay. So since you brought it, David Arquette up, I got to ask, who did you think was a worse world heavyweight champion, David Arquette or Vince Russo?
Vince Russo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good. It's unanimous. So. Around in that. So so you obviously have the talent, you got the roster. Take me to the day of the show. What is a typical show day like for you?
It is absolute madness. On a show day, there has been a significant amount of work that's gone into prepping that day. All of the flight itineraries, all of the pickup schedules, all of the merch preparations, all of the ticket preparations, working with the custodial crew, working with the maintenance team, working with the ring crew, working with lighting, working with sound, working with front of house folks, and then working with the wrestlers when they get there. So it's a day of hurry up and wait. In the morning, you start doing all the setup, and then You start making sure all the flights are coming in and everybody's getting picked up, and then it's getting everybody to the venue and meeting with all the talent, and then it's making sure everything's in place as the fans start lining up, and then it's making sure that everything's flowing as the fans come in and we do our fan fest, and then transitioning from that to the show itself. So that from 9 a.m. till bell time is absolutely crazy. And then usually it's somewhat crazy during a show as well, as you're trying to make sure the wrestlers are ready for the next match, make sure all the cues are right, is the time right, is the sound right, making sure nobody's injured. The biggest relief, and there's a phrase that we've come to use at Warrior that means everyone can exhale. And it's the phrase, the main event is in the ring. When we say on the radio, the main event is in the ring, everybody's been announced, every sound cue has been hit. Now it's just on those last performers to go out there and crush it and come home safely, and then we can all enjoy. So there's this incredible afterglow after a wrestling show in the back when you've had a show well done, you're talking to the talent, and that is where the promoters and the crew can really let their hair down and enjoy it. So sometimes people ask like, oh, you've got to love the shows. I don't see half the show because I'm doing things. I love the time after the show when I get to talk with the talent, and then the day later when I watch the show back and get to enjoy it as a fan. But it is a hectic 24 hours.
Sounds like it. So you mentioned the Fan Fest. How did the idea of the Fan Fest come about?
You know, it came about because we really wanted to create a festival atmosphere for Warrior Wrestling. And I'd been to so many, countless indie wrestling shows where sometimes some talent come out and they sell at intermission. Some talent come out and sell stuff beforehand. Some talent are hanging around to meet. Some talent aren't, etc. And you never know. It's kind of a crapshoot. And I always thought, as an indie wrestling fan, how cool would it be if I knew I was going to walk into an area and everyone was going to be there? There was no crapshoot to it, etc. Like, that would be, I'd pay money. I'd pay money to go just know everybody was going to be there and be able to hang out for a while with them. And so that's where the idea came from. And we started it with the first Warrior Wrestling, and people loved it. Yep. And so it just kind of grew from there. And, I have so many people who say, we love your shows, don't get us wrong, but the reason I drive 2 hours is for the Fan Fest. So it's like, great, well, then we're just going to keep doing it.
That's awesome. So have there, what is I'm trying to think, maybe not necessarily singling anybody out and stuff, but I mean, have you ever had any issues with any of the talent that you brought in, and that? So, and if so, maybe not necessarily call them out specifically, but just what were some of the challenges that some of the talent that you brought in presented?
We've learned throughout the process of doing this that independent wrestling is a very loosely / not organized endeavor most of the time. So most talent are used to that. We're all teachers, right? We're educators. We run meetings. We have structure. We have agendas. We have things like that. And so a lot of times there have been a handful of talent who are used to being like, when am I on? Later in the night? Like, great, I'll show up late, or I'll show up, or they'll duck out during the show or something like that, and people will be looking for them. So those have been some of the headaches that we've had. What's been nice, though, over the course of all the shows we've done is we've really cultivated a core group of talent who we love having, and they love working with us, and we have developed this together so they get how it works. So if as new people get worked in, they're like, oh, how does this work? And the talent who've been with us 10 shows go, oh, so this is the way the Fan Fest works. This goes over here. Here's how we do this. And they just get kind of worked into the culture of it. So now we've hit the point where we have a very clear culture for how we do things, and new talent just kind of get like raisins being kneaded into the bread dough. They just kind of get worked in to how we do things. But early on, it was a challenge to wrangle the talent throughout the course of a day. That would be the biggest pain in the butt.
So you mentioned, again, I'm going to bring it back to Mick Foley. You talked about how he was the reason why you got back into wrestling. What was it like for you when you first initially got into contact with Mick Foley? Then what was it like when you guys came to a deal and you knew he was coming here? And then what was it like kind of meeting him or seeing him, when he came to the show that the one time he was there for you specifically?
So I had met him before, actually. So in college, I ran a literary festival at our university, And I booked Mick as a speaker because a bunch of his books had been recent New York Times bestsellers. So I got to meet him a little bit in college and work with him. And he was just a gracious human, just a wonderful human being. In fact, fun story. So I was picking Mick up from the airport in South Bend. And you know how you wait with a sign for somebody like,
Right.
Foley or whatever. I thought it would be funny. So I was standing there as people were coming off the flight. And I had to find a sign that just said Al Snow. And he saw that, and Foley saw that and loved that. So we hit it off really quickly. So he was a great guy. And he was even better to work with in the wrestling context because he came in for this big angle for us in which Frank the Clown had put out an open hardcore challenge. Yep. And Mick Foley answered the challenge and destroyed Frank. And the entire segment was all Mick's idea. Every part of it, Mick has this brilliant creative juice that flows. And he saw it. And he gathered everybody who was going to be part of it backstage, the students who were extras, the wrestling trainees, Frank and everybody else. And it was amazing. It was like watching a general describe to you what it's going to be like when you go over the hill and win the war. Mick was like, this is going to happen, and we're going to do this, and then this will happen, and that will happen. And everyone is watching him with rapt attention. And you could see he had this unbridled passion for this stuff. He loves doing this. And so to see that, and then to see the finished product in the ring, as I said before, I rarely get to watch large chunks of the show because I'm so busy. I came through the curtain and watched that entire segment. And I remember Eric came through the curtain. He's like, hey, we got to do whatever the next thing was. And he looked at me. He's like, are you okay? I said, yeah, that was just the most perfect pro wrestling segment. And it was really a magical night, honestly.
That sounds like it. Yeah, I've had the pleasure of meeting Mick a few times as well, and he's always been very gracious to me and that and stuff. So it's really cool to hear other people, have the same experiences with Mick that I had.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Junkyard, Pro Wrestling Junkies #1 podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Spencer Cantor, also known as Number 11. Throw it up. Join the Dark Order. Dennis, introduce yourselves to these fine people who don't know who we are yet.
Well, if you don't know who we are by this time, well, we're going to just, I guess, have to keep on telling you until you figure it out. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, it is time to get out from whatever rock you have been living underneath and get with the program. My name is Dennis Day Jr., otherwise known as DDJ, the host of Whaddya Say with DDJ that drops every Monday on YouTube as well as all major podcasting platforms as part of the Pro Wrestling Junkies Pod Squad.
Cheap pop.
Well, I got to keep giving the people what they want.
And ladies and gentlemen, you tuned into the Junkyard, so you know what the people want. The people want Giovanni, Too Hottie, El Guapo, Too Hottie, here for all of your Junkyard listening needs, wants, and pleasures.
Whoa. Wait a minute here, guys. Hold on. Time out. This just something about this doesn't feel right today. I don't know what it is. Oh, wait a minute. Yes, I do. This isn't the Junkyard. This is Whaddya Say with DDJ. Quick. So, assuming that a lot of the people that listen to my show haven't had a chance to check out the Junkyard, can you share one of your stories about how The Rock kind of got...
So, crazy Rock story. When The Rock's DVD came out, The People's Champ, I wanted that DVD so bad. And it came out.
Oh, man, I love this story.
It came out during, kind of close to my birthday. So, I was dropping hints. That's what I wanted. I made it known throughout the house. That's what I wanted. And so my birthday comes and my mom, she takes me out to this big arcade. It was a 2-story arcade place that had just opened up in Grapevine. It was a big deal because, my mother off and on was a single mother. And to kind of spend that kind of money on this big extravagant party was a big deal. Mm-hmm. So we go to this big arcade. I'm having fun. and we get to the presents. And I'm here thinking, all right, this is the time I'm gonna get this movie. We're here at this arcade. I've got like 4 or 5 friends. Well, I didn't get the movie. I got like tickets to go to a concert that I wanted to go to. My aunt took me to some Batman stuff because I'm a big Batman fan. But granted, it was a great birthday, but my ungrateful, spoiled younger self just really wanted that Rock DVD, and boy, didn't I throw just like the queen of all hissy fits that day. And one thing about Hispanic parents, if you don't know, they're not very big on being ungrateful for what you've been given.
Mm-hmm.
So mind you, my mother has gone out, gotten this big party. I had a great time, but I didn't get the DVD, and I still throw a horrible just fit, telling my mom, I can't believe you didn't give me the only thing I wanted. Why do you even listen? I'm not going to tell you anything. And I got my ass beat. Oh, I got tore up. My mom went to town on me like no other. You would have thought that she was New Jack with the way she whooped my ass.
Now, these weren't like your traditional birthday spankings, were they?
No, these were full-on ECW December to Dismember ass whoopings. I got it bad, man. My mom was not joking around. And this tells you how bad of an ass whooping it was. I got an ass whooping so bad after the day of my birthday because I complained about this damn DVD that she bought me the DVD on her next paycheck because she felt that bad for whooping my ass that bad.
Wow. So she did it out of guilt.
Yes, I got it out of guilt. That's how bad that whooping is. You know how bad a whooping is for someone to get you something after they beat your ass? It was a good one.
Thankfully, I don't think I've ever had my ass whooped that badly. So
my mom don't play, man. 2 things my mom didn't do. She didn't raise a punk and she didn't raise an ungrateful son. Ooh, because boy, they'll break it. They'll break you fast.
Yeah, buddy. So what was it about pro wrestling that like drew you in?
It's a good question. I think in the beginning it was just the time with the family. Like my grandfather would always watch it, so sitting there with him, listening to him break down why this wrestler was good or this wrestler was getting heat, and then as I got older, starting to really put it all together and start really hating some wrestlers. And it's always a good heel that gets you into wrestling because you're like, oh, I just wish somebody whoops his ass. And then you get a good baby face in there. And, from there, you get caught up and you start to be like, man, I got to get home. Mondays after school, I got to run home and get to watch Raw. And I'm going to go over to my friend's house and we're going to watch Raw. And so it's kind of that whole thing, man. It started out just between having that time with my grandfather and then just the characters, the pageantry, and the stories got me in.
I want to say that's really cool hearing this because that is actually almost identical into how I got into wrestling because I watched it with my grandpa. He used to be into it and stuff, and that kind of became our thing. So it's nice that you and I kind of have that similar, origin story about how we fell in love with pro wrestling. So obviously we've been friends for a little while and we've talked, about shows and things like that. And I remember one topic that we covered on the Junkyard was, greatest live events that we've been to. And you mentioned going to WrestleMania 32 in Dallas. I believe you said was with your dad.
Yes.
What was that? Obviously, WrestleMania is a bucket list item for any red-blooded American wrestling fan. I've been to WrestleMania. You've been to WrestleMania. What is it like? We all know how big WrestleMania is. It's like the Super Bowl for us wrestling fans. But what is it like to say that you were actually in the crowd for a WrestleMania?
It is so crazy when you try to relay how big it is to say you were at a Mania. And it's even better of a story depending on how big a WrestleMania moment happened while you were there.
Right.
And I think for me, being at 32 with my dad, we didn't have the best seats. We were standing room only inside the stadium, but I worked there before, so I knew where the best places to stand were. We had a great line of vision the whole night. It was AJ Styles' first WrestleMania, so that was another big thing.
Mm-hmm.
But that ladder match where Zack Ryder finally won the belt.
Yes.
I think, even though he dropped it the next day, that moment, he's on the ladder, he has the belt over his head, he comes out and his dad rushes the ring. And then at that, they embrace, and then I'm there with my dad. He looks at me, I look at him, and we just hug it out. And I was just like, oh, we're a bunch of sappy fools. But that moment, that moment really got us.
Well, it was really interesting too, because I remember watching that, and I don't think anybody expected that to happen, because it seemed like a lot of people were genuinely shocked, myself included. And I was really upset and disappointed when he lost it the next night. But to kind of hear when we had Matt Cardona on one of our virtual markouts, and I remember asking him about that, and he gave a really interesting take that really changed my perspective on that whole event and stuff. And he talked about how winning the title at Mania only to lose it the next night actually made it that much more special, which was exactly the opposite of what I always believed, but just hearing his take on it, it was actually really just really kind of changed my perspective on that whole match.
Yeah, because as fans, we see that and we're like, oh, he was robbed. He just got the title.
Mm-hmm.
But as wrestlers, they know you just got the rub at Mania. Yep. That's the big thing. I don't care what happens from now on. I got my WrestleMania moment, and that's what a lot of guys do this for.
Mm-hmm. So kind of get an idea. My audience can get a little bit of an idea. Obviously, if they listen to the Junkyard, they know what you do. But they know Giovanni Too Hotty. But tell my audience a little bit more about Jovan Manacho. Who is Jovan Manacho?
Jovan Manacho is Giovanni Too Hotty with the filter. I think when we started doing the Junkyard, and a lot of people were like, you got to liven up, you've got to really bring the energy. Well, that was my key to turn it up to 10 or to 11. And
no, don't say 11. That's Spencer's number. We don't want him having a hissy fit.
Hey, I was gonna do it for him, but he's not here to pop up and say that's my number.
That's exactly why I don't want to hear him complaining about this. So
Giovanni Too Hotty is basically me turned all the way up. The craziness, the funniness, it's all the way up. Jovan Manacho, the person on a day-to-day basis, I've got a real good sense of humor. I get it from my father. We are both very smart-assy kind of people. And this is something I recently learned about us, actually. We don't deal with things the right way. I don't think people would consider us dealing with stuff healthy because we just make jokes about everything. My uncle recently passed, which was my dad's brother.
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing my dad could really say, because we were with him when he passed, my uncle passed in his apartment, which was good. He had his own room, his bed and everything. And my dad, the only thing he could say, he looked at me and he goes, well, at least he didn't die in the recliner in my house. I looked at him, I said, Dad, what the hell? And he goes, well, because your sisters would have found him and the dog would have been humping him. And I'm like, oh, that's how we process everything. We turn it into a big joke. So it's
that's awesome.
It may be bad and it might be good at times, but that's who we are, man. We have a real low filter. For anybody that listens to the Junkyard, Giovanni Too Hotty has no filter.
No,
but in real life, I do kind of watch what I say, and I'm not crazy, and I legitimately have no beef with Jorge Conti breaking kayfabe there. Does that mean
wait? So you mean to tell me this whole Jorge Conti thing, it's not real?
Breaking kayfabe, and I hate making the business look like it's fake. That might be the cornet in me, but 110%. I'm not crazy, and I'm not going to beat up Jorge Conti. It's just it might happen one day on a spare chance because his wife is extremely beautiful, and if this was old school rules back in the day where people dueled out for stuff, and I could be like, hey, I will fight you for your wife, then you better believe I'm going to give him hell. But no, just on the normal cuff. Jovan Menacho has no issues with Jorge Conti. Giovanni Tuhati does, but Chase Owens, Jovan Menacho does have beef with you. That's real beef.
Awesome. So one of the things I always like to ask my guests when we talk about, like, you know, getting into wrestling and, like, you know, when you first started watching, who your earliest favorites, what is like your earliest memory of professional wrestling? Like, what's like the earliest thing you remember seeing happen, you know, be it at, like, you know, just on a Monday Night Raw or an episode of Impact or whatever? Like, what is like your earliest memory of wrestling?
So probably the earliest memory, and I don't know if I can give you a specific thing, but I mean, like, just watching, I would say just like watching like Raw or SmackDown or Impact, you know, just whenever they were on TV. I can't name like the specific moment or match or anything. It's just, you know, seeing the high flying, you know, action on the screen. What honestly really got me into wrestling, I think, was my love for Power Rangers. Still honestly a fan to this day. You know, it was these teenagers with attitude. That's the whole statement there.
Yep.
And you know, they kicked butt, a lot of martial arts and everything. And once I saw like there was a version of that on TV, I was like, holy crap, it's like real life Power Rangers. And it was just so cool to be able to see that. But then, you know, diving more into it and, you know, growing up is like, okay, that's cool when I saw that like as a kid, but, you know, now and seeing everything, it's just like, okay, I have a great respect for the business now. And some of these people are so freaking athletic, and I will never be anywhere close to that.
Do not feel bad, because I am right there with you when it comes to not being athletic enough, because yeah, I'm definitely not.
Yeah, but hey, you're doing a great job on your weight loss journey. I think you've lost about 80 pounds now. You're killing it, man. So just keep up the great work. I know you're going to hit 100 soon.
Yeah, well, I know somebody out there has threatened me with 100 push-ups if I don't get to 100 pounds, and that's ultimately where I want to be. If I can get to where I've lost 100 pounds, I'd say that'd be a good place to kind of, you know, level off there and stuff. But enough about me and my weight loss. Kind of going back into our conversation here. So obviously wrestling's the one thing that brought us together and stuff. And something that I asked Jovan earlier in the show was, what is it about wrestling fans and just wrestling in general that really makes it unique compared to like the fan bases of, say, Major League Baseball, you know, the NFL, the NBA? You know, we all have our favorite teams that we root for. In your case, you have about 5 or 6, depending on who's winning and stuff. But anyways, though, what is it about professional wrestling fans that really separate us from like the fan bases of other sports, in your opinion?
Okay, first off, I do have like a few teams I root for. I think there's a lot of people that do that, but my main team with football or anything is the Alabama Crimson Tide. I want that on the record. That is my team. I will never waver from them, whether it be the Atlanta Falcons, the 49ers, the Tennessee Titans. Those might waver, but that will never not. So that's on the record. But then getting back into the question you actually just asked. So with the fans with pro wrestling, I would say it makes us different because I kind of feel like more as like a family and friend atmosphere with wrestling fans. Like these are people that you can live in the moment with and celebrate with, like if there's like a crazy heel turn or a big return like a Royal Rumble or something, or hell, even doing it like with our Zoom calls and Facebook Messenger calls or anything right now, it brings people together. Yes, like other sports like baseball and football and everything, like they have their fan bases and everything and very passionate, but those are just based, you know, on like a certain like team or something. But this, like, there's so many different like wrestlers. Like anybody could be a fan of like Lucha Libre or New Japan or something, and they could instantly become friends. So like anybody you could meet, like somebody from Mexico or Japan or some of the United States or Australia, like you can all connect over this one love of professional wrestling. And that's kind of one thing I think that makes professional wrestling fans just different from any of the other type of fans.
Well, I'll be there and stuff. So because I try to catch you guys every week because I really like what you do. You guys have also had on. You just recently had on Vampiro, and then a little bit before that, you just had on the WWE Hall of Famer, The Godfather. And stuff. So, what's it like when you get someone? And actually, this just popped in my head while you were talking here. So, what's it like when you guys get someone, say, like Vampiro or The Godfather on? I mean, what goes through your mind when you get someone of that notoriety on your show?
It's interesting. The one thing all three of us constantly agree on, and at least one of us says it every single time, whoever the special guest is logs off, and it's kind of surreal. Mm-hmm. It's a very weird feeling, just sitting and being involved in an hour-long conversation with somebody that you've literally only seen or met on television. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's nerve-wracking. It's I can't really speak for the other guys, but for me, it's a little stressful before we get into it. But once they come on and we get a good feeling of how they are and that everything's gonna be cool. It's fun. You get to ask a wrestler any questions you want for an hour, and that's a cool thing, because without the show, I would have never gotten to say that I kind of hung out with Vampiro. You know what I mean?
Right. I mean, I know the feeling because we've, on the Junkyard, we're lucky enough to get Tama Tonga, and then we also got Chris Van Vliet. And then on my show, like one of my early episodes, I had former NWA champion Tim Storm on, and it's one of my favorite things when I talk with professional wrestlers is picking their brains. Like I love hearing them tell their stories and just, kind of just kicking back and relaxing and then just realizing that, hey, you know what? Vampiro's just like you and me. He's a human. He's a guy, he just happens to be a professional wrestler and stuff, and I just think that's the coolest thing. So,
and back, you're old enough to remember the cable, like old school cable boxes with like the little red numbers on them.
Oh yes,
and you could find
early childhood.
Yeah, you could find a guy, and the guy would sell you for a small price a little thing that would fucking unscramble all the scrambled channels and all this shit. And like my buddy, like the guy I stayed with, had one of these, and I remember watching old Raws and old pay-per-views, but the Raw was like what hooked me, and it was a Tatanka match. And I don't remember who Tatanka was fighting. Like my guess is best guess is Brooklyn Brawler, but I was like 11, and I've done way too many drugs since then to actually have a clear memory. But I just remember watching it and being like, what the fuck is this? And something about the idea of like a Native American fighting a fucking like half homeless dude from Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm.
It just blew my mind. I was like, what is this? And it just, I guess like from there, like I got really into Raw, and especially once the Attitude Era started. Cause like, once I hit cause I was like 95, I was 11, 12, 13, Attitude Era started rolling, and it was like puppies and fucking all this shit. And like, it was just a great time to be a wrestling fan. The Attitude Era was a really good time. So like once I got hooked, like that, it was a long time before I just gave up on it. Like it was really good for a while, and then it was early 95, early Raw that really got me into pro wrestling.
Gotcha. And who Who were some of your favorites when you first started watching? Like, who did you meet? Who immediately like drew you in when you saw them on TV?
The ones like I can remember, like I really remember being into like The Godfather was always like one of my like early childhood favorites because like hose, he had the hose, man. They were God, they were fucking hot. And D'Lo Brown, something about D'Lo Brown always like really resonated with me. I liked him a lot. I really liked like Ken Shamrock and Stone Cold, but I mean, like when it comes down to like the guys who like transcend the business for me and are like my top 5, like when I really get into like the best of the best for me personally, like it's Roddy Piper, Brock Lesnar, Kurt Angle, Mick Foley, and Stone Cold. Like those guys are like my Mount Rushmore, like my top 5 really of like pro wrestling, the guys that I just everything they do. And like, there's a lot of guys who are in the top 10, but those guys for me are,
to quote Randy Savage, the cream of the crop.
Yeah. Oh, the cream. Yeah.
Yeah. My top 5: Flair, Steamboat, Randy Savage, Steve Austin, Kurt Angle. That's my top 5 right there.
And I can't argue with any of those guys. Like, like Ric Flair for me is like, and it's a difference between being like Ric Flair for me is the greatest of all time. Like I really do think he is the greatest of all time when it comes to professional wrestling. But like, because I didn't get to grow up with him in his prime, like he doesn't resonate the same way with me. I think for me, the reason like Roddy Piper resonates so much for me is like, he transcended pro wrestling in a way that most people can't, in the way that The Rock does. Like, he was a huge star, like outside of pro wrestling.
Yep.
And he also managed to continue doing that. I mean, he was in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia and was hilarious in it. He was on fucking, I think it was Fantasy Factory with Rob Dyrdek.
He may have been on there, yeah.
Because like they did like a match, like a before WrestleMania on like one of the WrestleMania All Access things or whatever. Like he tag teamed with fucking Rob Dyrdek and Roddy Piper tag teamed.
Wow.
And so like, like it's a guy who like really like, I mean, going from being in like the first WrestleMania, right?
Yeah, he was part of that main event.
Yeah, to main eventing that, to like being in, yeah, like that's a really incredible career. But yeah, so like guys like that really drew me in, but yeah, during the Attitude Era, I mean, Val Venus, like anything where that it was just like over the top, Although I never got into DX, I was never a huge fan of them.
Really? So, kind of getting back, steering the conversation back towards wrestling. Don't get me wrong, this is great and stuff, but I want to get these questions out of the way. When you started watching back in in '98 and stuff, who were some of the guys that drew you in, and I guess it's the easiest way to put it. Who are some of your favorites back then when you started?
All the people you'd expect: Stone Cold, Mick Foley, D-Generation X. For heaven's sakes, everyone went around the schoolyard going, suck it, suck it, suck it, suck it, suck it. A bunch of little 12-year-olds going, suck it, suck it, suck it, not having a clue what we're saying. And you had a clue, but you didn't really know.
Right.
And that's what it was. It was everybody back then. The Godfather, Pimpin' Ain't Easy. And, the show gave me this great opportunity to talk to the Godfather, which I didn't really talk. Isaac did all the talking. I just got plastered in the background. But, hey, it was a good time.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I just, like I said right before we started recording, I recorded with Isaac, and we talked about the Godfather because he mentioned, how Godfather was one of his favorites. And I asked him, what was it like, to, actually spent some time talking to him, and he gave a really good, told a really good story about, just having him on the show, and even the fact that he jumped on about 20 or so minutes before you started recording, just, shot the shit with you guys.
Yeah, as far as that goes, The Godfather, I still think is the pinnacle of our interviews. He got on 20 minutes before. We talked with him. His wife was in the background throwing commentary in. And I don't know if it made the broadcast or not, but there's this one moment where she passes him a drink. And he takes a sip and he goes, "Damn, did you put any Coke in this, Jack?"
Oh, man. That's good stuff, man. I really love the show, and we're definitely going to spend some time talking about that a little bit later. But you mentioned about, like who some of your favorites were and stuff like that. One of the questions I've been asking everybody on my little invasion series that I've been doing here, and everybody's given some really good answers, and I definitely want to get your take on this next question is, what is it about the fan base of professional wrestling that really separates it from, say, the fan bases of, the teams in the NFL, the teams in Major League Baseball, the NBA, the NCAA, NHL? Like, what makes pro wrestling fans so completely different from fans of, like, all the other major sports in your mind?
So we're going to talk modern day here. We ain't going back in time because there's a little bit of difference here. But right now, and for the entire time I've been a fan, and to give you the full perspective here, I'm a Philly fan. We hate everybody. But in wrestling, I'm a Hogan fan, you're a Sheik fan. I don't hate you because you're a Sheik fan. Like, we're all just kind of a family. We're all here to see the product get through and just improve.
Right.
We're here to see a great match. We're here to watch the hero beat down the villain, or in some cases, the villain beat down the hero. It's a great time. Whereas, as an Eagles fan, you come up to me telling me you're a Cowboys fan, get out of here. I don't want to see you around here anymore.
Yeah, I know the conversations between you and Jovan, or who is known as a diehard Cowboys fan. They probably get pretty interesting around the NFL season.
Yeah, we don't talk much about it because you just can't talk about Cowboys fans. They live in a delusional state. The last time they did anything relevant, VHS was still relevant.
Well, the last time my team did anything relevant, I think Beta was still around. So that should tell you how bad I have it, being a Bears fan.
Yeah, but at least you're the Bears. You have SNL to fall back on.
Okay, so you talked about back, watching Saturday night's main event and stuff, but what was it? Obviously, you mentioned about Hogan was one of the first ones that drew you in, but what was it about pro wrestling that kind of hooked you? Like, was it the characters, the athleticism, the stories? What about pro wrestling was really what brought you in?
At first, it was the characters. Like, I didn't. I didn't watch the actual wrestling or appreciate like I do now, like the actual art of doing that. But so it was definitely the like over the top characters, bigger than life, and it was also something where, and it is still to this day, I could do and watch, and it would keep me like my mind off anything else. So like. Maybe I shouldn't say this. Every single night when I go to sleep, I watch wrestling. I set my sleep timer and fall asleep. And my wife doesn't understand. I said, because it calms me down. I can just focus and be in this little world. And like, I love it. And, so that was a big, that became a big draw watching wrestling.
And I like, one of the things I really took from what you just said is that it gives you something to focus on. It gives you something to wind down with and stuff like that. And that's exactly what one of the many things that pro wrestling has done for me. Mm-hmm. I can have like a bad day, or whatever. And I come home, if my wife's not there, cause she and my son are at her mom's house and stuff. And that like I could throw on, watch whatever, like we're recording this on a Wednesday. So, obviously most of us will be watching Dynamite or NXT. I could throw that on and just watching these guys kind of act out all this aggression and stuff that just kind of gets it out of my system and stuff. And it really helps me unwind. And like you said, it gives me something to focus on. And that. So I really loved hearing you say that, because that's kind of exactly how I look at pro wrestling. It's like, you know, an escape from reality, an outlet, that kind of thing.
You know, it's funny because I had a lot of like mental health issues, you know, over the last 15 years. And it always came to, it was like, oh, well, at least I have wrestling. At least I have this to look forward to Monday. At least I have this to look forward to Wednesday, you know. And so like, it's stupid to say like, it's always been there for me, but it is like, it's been there for me when other things were absent.
Right. I know. And I agree with you. Like I said, there's been very few things that have been constant in my life, you know, my family, you know, my friends, and pro wrestling. That's basically it.
Sure.
You know, and that, so, but, what is it about pro wrestling that you really like the most?
How hardcore it is, and how the people that put their bodies on the line for people to watch. That's something that's very, and also it's a sport that people never give up, and whenever they get knocked down, they get right back up.
So do you think like a lot of really good life lessons are kind of taught to us when, you know, while watching wrestling, you think? Yes, and also because I said that answer to your last question, it's because, like, look at Darby Allin at Revolution. At Revolution, he jumped off that story window, right? Yes, he did. And he just fought. He's fighting tonight, and he fought like 2 nights ago, and he hurt his ankle, and he's fighting tonight. Yeah. So he just got back up, even though he has an injury. He got right back up. Yeah, that's a really good lesson for people to learn. So let me ask you this. First off, Steven, a lot of people may not necessarily know how old you are. How old are you? I am 9. Wow, you're for a 9-year-old man, you sure know a lot about wrestling and stuff. 4 months until my birthday. 4 months. And then you're going to be 10? Wow. My mom's getting very upset about it. She doesn't want me to be double digits. What? Well, because you're hitting double digits, yeah. Well, I've got a son who's going to be 6 in about a little under a month, and I'm kind of getting, you know, parents get that way. So just as a little favor, man, from one parent to another, cut your mom some slack, because, you know, it's just you're growing up, and, you know, and it's a hard thing to watch your kids grow up because you want them to be little forever. I know I'm like that with my son, so cut your mom a little slack there, all right? Okay. All right, buddy. Okay. So one of the things that you've gotten to be really well known for on the Pro Wrestling Junkies Facebook group is your Steve's 3. And for those of you that are listening to this who don't know what Steve's 3 is we do a lot of virtual meet and greets as part of the Pro Wrestling Junkies group. We call them virtual markouts. And Steven is always the third guest person on to ask a question, but he doesn't ask just one. He doesn't ask just 2. He asks 3 questions of every wrestler we have. No, sometimes it's 5 or maybe 4. 4? Okay. So sometimes 3. Usually puts them in case someone steals my question. Then I'm like, they didn't ask me a question, but I should put it in because I really want to know. So I asked it. So what is it like when you get to talk? How do you feel when you get to talk to these wrestlers? I feel joy going up my body, and yeah, I feel happy. And so when you said it's been going straight with my wrestling career, right? But there was one point where I went down, and it wasn't really nothing to do with wrestling. Then I went back up and got to wrestling again. That's awesome. So when you kind of didn't want anything to do with wrestling, what brought you back? Probably AEW. Okay. And what was it about AEW that brought you back? Revolution. First event that I've watched in I didn't watch one single wrestling event in 2 months when I went downhill. And then that was my first one, and I went right back up. And what was your favorite match from that Revolution show? Easy. Either was a sparring death match, or it was the Darby Allin match. That's why I love Darby Allin. Yeah, that street fight was pretty cool and stuff. So one of the things, I just got done actually interviewing your tag team partner on Steven and Brad's Talking Wrestling right before I started recording with you, and he told me that you are a diehard fan of death matches. Is that true?
Yeah.
What is it? Because what is it about the death matches that you really like?
You know how the B word goes all over their face?
Uh-huh.
And they go through, they like DDT and do these cool moves on the barbed wire and stuff?
Right, yeah.
There's your answer.
So, we're talking, late 90s, early 2000s, was when you kind of like you became a wrestling fan. When did you decide that, this was something that you wanted to do? Like you wanted to start making a career out of it?
I didn't come to that conclusion until I was getting ready to like graduate high school.
Okay.
So, and it really wasn't like my decision. It was like my dad kind of like influenced me, because growing up, my dad would always ask me, my brothers and sister, hey, he was like, what do you guys see where do you guys see yourself in future wise? Because he always wanted us to have in the back of our heads, like, what's the goal? Okay, we're not just here just to be here. We don't just go to high school, just go to high school. We don't just go to college, just go to college. He was like, what's the end goal? And for me, it was always about something in entertainment, acting, modeling, just something. I didn't have a foregone conclusion of what it really was going to be, but I was like, hey, man, Dad, I want to do this. So at the time, my dad is, I'm watching SummerSlam. I'm watching the match between Kurt Angle and Rey Mysterio. Awesome match, by the way. Still one of my favorites. Still one of my favorites today. But so I'm watching that match, and my dad walks in, and he's doing the same spiel that he's always doing, is asking me about my future. And I'm just like, Dad, I'm trying to watch this match, bro. I'm invested in this thing, man. So, but he was just like, well, let me just ask you real quick while they're plugging like something else, like a commercial or something. I was like, all right, you got about, I think, maybe a minute and 30 seconds. So he goes on, and he's just like, hey, this randomly popped in my head, but you always tell me that you want to do something in entertainment. Have you ever thought about doing this? Because you show a hell of a lot of interest in wrestling. And I was just like, I just do that with my friends and everything. Like, I probably couldn't do a career out of this. And he was just, well, give us some thought. And so upon doing that, like, that literally bugged the hell out of me until like the graduation. Like, I was just like, it was one of those things that I, just going to bed at night, I was thinking about it. Waking up, I was thinking about it, like, because I knew where I wanted to go to college, because it was like the art school downtown. I was just like, so I thought about it day in, day out, all day, if you will. And so I was just like, you know what, I'll give it a shot. Let's see what happens. I'm one of those people, I hate the words what if.
Right.
I never want to have to utter those words, what if I can help it, because I'm just like, well, what if I was destined for it, but I just didn't pursue it or something. So once I did the research, I found the wrestling school of Windy City Pro Wrestling at the time.
Okay.
My dad took me down to the studio to see the studio, to talk to the owner, and sort of get like a good vibe and intel of like what all goes into it, like how much it's going to be, the training, all the stuff that that will come along with it. So once we did all of that, in fact, I actually got to see a lot of the superstars I get to wrestle with now, like the Steve Bozes, and that was the night that I actually met Acid Jazz,
okay,
who would ultimately become like one of my best friends ever. But we didn't know it at the time. I was just like, he was just coming back and from an injury, and then he was also going to school at the same time too. So he also helped my dad because, you know, parents being parents, they were just like, if you're going to do this, you still got to keep up with your schooling too. And he was like, I don't know how this is going to work. So then Acid Jazz kind of helped with that. But no, me and him, we went back, we talked about it, and he was like, well, how do you feel? I said, I feel pretty good about it. I liked what they all had to say. I think I want to give it a shot. I feel like I need to do this just because I don't want to look back and say, you know, what if? Right. So once we had the talk, we got everything laid out with like schools and stuff like that. I immediately started training and just like really like busting hump and just trying to showing up to practice every day, trying to make sure that I was going to be in the best shape and just give my all, because I wasn't coming into this like half-ass. Like I wanted to go full throttle and just deliver, you know what I mean? So I remember training every day for like, you know, I think 6 months it took me to fully master a lot of like the techniques and stuff.
Okay.
But yeah, no, it was that was the start of my run, man.
Cool. This is Steve Tortorello from Warrior Wrestling in Chicago Heights, Illinois, and you are listening to Whaddya Say with DDJ. Enjoy the show, everybody.
As always, thanks again to all of my guests who took time out of their days to join me and spend some time talking some wrestling. I really enjoy talking to these people and getting their takes in the world of pro wrestling, and I really hope you guys do as well. That's all I got really for this episode. Tune in next week where my guest will be the owner / promoter of Chicagoland Championship Wrestling, John Bullard, and he gives his takes on WrestleMania 37, both nights 1 and 2. We talk about all the matches that happened, and he gives his takes on the matches and things maybe he might have done differently had he booked the show. So I think you're really going to like that. But once again, thank you very much to all of you who listen to the show, and I appreciate your support. Have a great day.
If you love professional wrestling and great podcasts, check out Whaddya Say with DDJ on Facebook, Twitter, and also on ProWrestlingTees.com. In the search field, just type in DDJ and buy the best professional wrestling podcast shirt around.